Parents left me alone after their divorce, but after I inherited $1 million from Grandpa, they are showering me with unconditional love and demanding their part of the share. I, 21 meters, have been abandoned by my family when I was around 12. You see, my parents got separated when I was 11. It took me by surprise because it seemed all fine between them. One fine day, they both sat me down and said they were getting divorced. I thought this to be a prank because I had different notions about divorce. I heard from my friends that when their parents got divorced, there was at least a year-long fight and yelling. In my case, it was a silent divorce. They said they both liked someone else. Mom would be moving out with her new boyfriend while Dad's mistress would move into our house. They would have joint custody of me since both Mom and Dad would be put up 2 miles apart. I could shuffle between them weekly. I didn't know what to say. Rather, I didn't have any say in that. My family was splitting apart, and all I could do was sit and sob. My parents assured me that I would be their topmost priority. They both promised all sorts of things, like getting me the latest video games, taking me on vacations, and getting me anything I wanted. I wish I could make them understand that I didn't want any of those things. I just wanted to live with them in the same house as a family. It was too tough for me to see Mom packing her stuff and leaving the house and watching Dad's mistress unloading her truck and setting my parents' bedroom as hers. Mom and Dad got separated on good terms. Stepmom had twin boys almost of the same age as mine. They both hated me in the same way I hated them. My mom's boyfriend had a daughter from his previous wife, but she was living with her mother. I thought of spending more time at Mom's, but soon after she moved out, she got pregnant with her boyfriend's baby, and it all got so weird and complicated. I felt like I was not welcome there. Mom's husband got uncomfortable seeing me. They would get into PDAs in front of me, and I hated it. In my dad's house, I felt the same way because my stepmom and her sons hated me. So, I started living more and more with my aunt, father's sister, who is also my godmother. She was 10 years older than my father. She was living alone, so I occasionally showed up at hers. After a year of shuffling between the 3 houses, I permanently moved in with my aunt. It took more than 3 months for my parents to realize that I had moved in with Aunt. Mom thought I was at Dad's, and Dad thought I was at Mom's. They didn't bother to check on me during this period. They both were so busy with their family that they forgot I existed. My aunt was a real savior. She made me feel loved and wanted. She would take me out for dinners and movies. I used to tag along with her for vacations. During summer, we used to visit Grandpa at his farm in the countryside. It was fun living with her. Initially, Dad used to send my monthly allowance to Aunt, but eventually, he started defaulting on that. Sometimes Aunt used to remind them, and sometimes she would let it slide. I felt bad for piling up on her, so I started working for her and earning my living. She had a plant nursery. I worked there after my school. I also helped her in household chores, taking out the trash, and even running groceries for her. It was fun living with her. Meanwhile, my parents forgot they had a son. They even forgot my birthdays. Only when Aunt reminded them, they would call and say they loved me so much. Sometimes I heard Aunt calling and informing them that I was sick, but none of them showed up. Even on my school's graduation day, none of them showed up. It was my aunt who was there to cheer me up. When Aunt called them to school about their negligence, they would call me and apologize to me. I grew so resentful of them that I stopped answering their calls. Eventually, they stopped calling me. They would now lay the blame on me, that I had grown rude and was not answering their calls. I said, if you guys want to have a blame game, so be it. I'm not going to let that affect me. I don't want you guys in my life. After school, I went to UNI and moved out from Aunt's place. I still visit her every few months. I ensure to show up at her birthdays and holidays because she has also gotten attached to me in all these years. I am in my final year at uni. 3 months back, my grandpa, father's side, passed away. It was a terrible moment for both me and my aunt. We both were closest to him. Dad and my other uncles barely visited him. The irony is they all turned up for his funeral and at the lawyer's office to see his will. Unfortunately for them, Grandpa gave all his belongings to Aunt, his 150-acre farmland, the farmhouse, and $1 million in cash. The remaining money he gave off to charity. That was brutal, but if you know his side of the story, it would make sense. I'll write about it in another thread. Briefly, understand that Grandpa was ill for a long time, and he wanted to meet his sons. Despite Aunt requesting her brothers to visit Grandpa, none of them showed up. Aunt shifted with him in his final days to take care of him. I had moved out from my uni by then. After getting the possessions of the property, Aunt called me home. Her house is what I call home. She told me she would be giving me the $1 million Grandpa had left for her. The happiness I felt was beyond words, not because she gave me the money, yeah, somewhat, but moreover to think that she cared for me so much. When I was living with her, I used to rant about how I wanted to start my own company, hire employees, and so on. She gave me the money and asked me to use that for my dream venture. I just hugged her and cried. If not for her, my life would have been miserable. It didn't take enough time for this news to reach my parents. Bam! They suddenly started showering me with their unconditional love. They started calling and checking on me. I asked them to back off. I don't want you guys back in my life. Last week, Dad showed up at my dorm. He got the address from my aunt. I bet none of them remember which uni I'm studying at. He said he was so proud that I would be graduating this year. After singing praises of me, he asked me why I was not visiting his home. I asked him, when was the last time you called? He stood silent and then said, "Oh, you're still mad at us for the divorce. Come on, move on. We both love you. Your mother also misses you. Let me drive you home, then we all can have dinner together." I said, "Back off. The only family I have is my aunt. You both abandoned me long before, so quit showing off your fake love. I know why you are here. That $1 million brought you here, right?" He remained silent and said he had no ulterior motive except for love. He was here to say sorry and wanted me back in his life. He said he heard my graduation was nearing, and he was here to ensure that I invited them, unlike my school graduation day when I didn't call either of them. I hated having any conversation with him, so I left him midway, saying I had a class. The same day, I got a voicemail from Mom. She said she was expecting an invite for my graduation day. She said she and Dad couldn't attend uni, so they both always dreamed of me going to UNI. Hence, she was very excited that I was able to cut through it. The thing is, I don't want either of them on my big day. I told my aunt about this, and she said it was up to me but suggested I reconcile with my parents. I don't know what to do. I also don't know if they are reconciling for money or if they are genuinely happy for me getting a uni degree. Update 1. Hello there. Sorry for the late update, life has been busy. Good news, I have graduated from uni. I landed a job as well. Thank you all. Let me start by answering some of the common questions I got in the comments. The first was about my aunt. People asked me about her family and how she was able to accommodate me for so many years. I think I wrote in my initial post that my aunt is 10 years older than my dad. When I moved to her place, she was in her late 50s. She was single, her husband died in an accident when I was tiny, maybe 1 or 2 years old. She has a daughter who had moved out in her teens for medical school. She is a cardiologist now and is settled in the UK. And has been living alone. She didn't date any men after her husband's demise. Her daughter and I tried to set her up with a few men, but she absolutely denied it. She said she loved her plants and was happy nursing them. Some of you said I was too harsh on my parents, that they have a right to get separated and remarry. You all are right, they do have the freedom to leave and choose their partner, but it is never justified to ignore your children after your new family comes into your life. My parents did the same. They neglected me for their new family. Initially, they said I would stay 1 week at Dad's and 1 week at Mom's. Though we were following this schedule, sometimes they would be like, "Uck, it's my time again to have you." They would always plan without me. Their dinner plans would always be after I left. They would even talk like this in front of me, "Oh, this week is here, let's go out next week." How would you feel when your parents behave like this? I think I have spoken about Mom. Within a few months of her moving in with her boyfriend, she got pregnant. They indulged in PDAs in front of me, which was unbearable. They once took me on a 2-day trip with them. They made me sit inside the room for the whole 2 days while they went outside sunbathing. When they were in the room, they would ask me to sit on the balcony outside. Though I was a kid, I knew exactly what was going on inside. I mean, I was 11. Besides, I could hear them. Gross, I know, and that man is not even your father, so how do you expect me to stick around them? I stopped going to Mom's after that. Dad was still better than Mom. Sometimes he tried to include me in the plans, but his stepsons would throw tantrums at him. Then he would say, "Okay, skip this one. Maybe next week father and son could go fishing." That next week would never come because, next week, I would be at Mom's. Soon I realized that my parents had some sort of agreement that whenever they had to get rid of me, they would say, "Let's do it next week," and then next week, I would be the other one's responsibility. Once, he was able to tag me along on their family vacation, and it was so horrible. The first day, we all went out. His wife and her sons kept him busy, and I felt so much neglected. Even for the family pictures, they would ask me to take theirs. I was in none of the pictures with them. There were just 4 pictures of me. In 3 of them, I was alone, and in 1, it was with Dad. I guess now I've given enough context to people who have been telling me that I was harsh on my parents. Anyways, talking about the current situation, like I said, my parents wanted me back in their life. They said it was because they wanted to be a part of my graduation day, and it was a proud moment for them. I said, "I don't want you guys on my big day. Where were you guys during my high school graduation? Busy with your new family, that's right." When they persisted further, I said, "Okay, but I didn't invite them." I thought they would again reach out to me as the graduation day approached. I even got extra hall tickets for them in case they showed up uninvited, but they didn't. They forgot about it and attended the convocation. I strictly asked Aunt not to reveal the dates to my parents. It is almost a month now since my graduation day, but none of them called me to check for the dates. So, my graduation was just an excuse for them to have me back in their life. Update 2. Here's a new update. Almost 2.5 months after my graduation day, Mom called me and said my half-sister had graduated from primary school and now they have put her in a private elementary school. However, they have a shortage of funds, and they want me to pitch in. I was flabbergasted at her demand. I asked why she thought I should fund my half-sister's education. She didn't waste any time getting to the point. "We know your aunt gave you her $1 million inheritance. Your sister needs you, this is your time to step up as a big brother." I stopped her right there. "Hello, delusional. I've never seen that sister you're talking about. Where were you when I needed my mom? When I was sick and cold, you were nowhere." She started sobbing and said, "What can I say if you're still stuck in the past? I thought you had a huge sum of money, what are you going to do with it?" What's better than your sister getting educated in a private school? I wanted to say a lot, but I didn't. I simply said, I have plans for that money, and I cannot spare a penny to anyone else. She hung up the phone after that. She didn't even ask me about my graduation day. I was right, their rekindled love was only for money. I was still processing it when one day I got a call from a bank. They wanted me to pay for my dad's defaulted mortgage. I asked how they got my number, and they said my dad gave it to them. Dad had taken a personal loan and hadn't paid the mortgage for a few months. When they came hunting for him, he requested they contact me because he had run out of money. To be honest, I panicked initially because I had no idea how this process worked. I got scared, thinking maybe I was legally obligated to pay his debt since I was his son. Thankfully, I didn't succumb to the pressure and told them I needed to check with my dad first. Instead of talking to him, I called up my lawyer friend. He wasn't a lawyer yet, but he was in his final year of law school and knew the legalities quite well. He said, "No, you're not legally bound." I asked him why the bank called me for the money, and he explained that the recovery agent can try to recover the amount from anyone willing to pay on the debtor's behalf, but I can refuse at any time. I didn't call Dad after that. I knew he would plead with me to pay for his mortgage. Knowing it wasn't on me, I waited for the bank to call me again. They did, after a week, asking when I would pay. Recovery agents have assertive tones to scare people, and I was intimidated the first time. This time, I confronted them. Who gave you the right to talk to me like this? Did I default on the mortgage? No, right? Then you better watch your tone. I'm not paying a penny. Contact the person who defaulted, not me. They apologized and hung up. I didn't need to lecture them, but I wanted them to direct their anger at my dad. A couple of hours later, I got a call from Dad's wife. She was yelling, "What did you tell the recovery officers?" They got so pissed off they took Dad by his collar and threatened to break his bones if he didn't pay the mortgage. I remained calm and said, "I just told them to chase the original debtor, not me." She screamed, "Don't you have any heart for your dad? He's struggling, and you're looking the other way despite having so much money." I replied, "Yeah, I don't have any heart for him because he didn't have his for me. He has his heart for you and your boys, so why don't you chip in? I'm sure he took that money for you people." She hung up. That same night, Dad called me. He was drunk and sobbing, saying he was sorry for his mistakes and how he treated me. He pleaded for forgiveness and wanted to make things right. I said, "Sorry and remorse don't matter to me anymore. I've learned to live without you, and I'd like to keep it that way." I don't know if I did the right thing by denying him the money. I do feel bad that he was chased by the bank officials, but I also think this might be staged to emotionally blackmail me for money. If he asked me directly, I would have refused outright, like I did with Mom. What do you guys think? Update 3. Thanks for the valuable comments. Some of you were right, it wouldn't have hurt me to cover a couple of months of his mortgage. I even thought about it, but you know what? They don't deserve it, neither of them. After writing the last update, I felt so remorseful that I almost called Dad to ask how much money he needed. But before I could, I got a mail from Mom inviting me for dinner. It said, "Sorry we couldn't make it to your graduation day. We want to do this for you, just the three of us, me, Dad, and you, like old times." I wasn't keen on reminiscing about old family times, but I accepted the invite. I wanted to end the saga. When I showed up, they were saying the same things Dad said before: sorry, apologies, remorse, forgiveness, and wanting to get back together as a family. I just played along, nodded, and smiled. I wanted to see where it was going. Out of nowhere, Mom asked, "Baby, what plans do you have for the money?" I looked at her, and she continued, "Dad and I could suggest some good investment advice. You're pretty young to take this decision on your own." I casually replied, "Yeah, and is helping me with that, so I'm good, thanks." Silence prevailed for a few minutes. Then she said, "You know Dad is in trouble because he defaulted on the mortgage." I said, "I know, but Dad, why did you take that personal loan?" He lowered his head and said, "For my son's college." Before I could react, Mom said, "Doesn't matter what the purpose was. The question is, Dad's in trouble, and we have to help him. Why don't you clear off his mortgage, and his stepson will pay you back once he gets a job. The remaining money you can give to me for your half-sister's private school education. She'll pay you back once she's older and earns." I replied, "How about we silently eat our dinner and call it a day?" She lost her mind at my sarcastic reply and yelled, "You're still that attention-seeking brat who only cares about himself." I said, "Yeah, that's what I am." I could have lectured them about their behavior, but who wants to waste time on them? They know I have an education loan to pay off, but still, they want me to give my money for my stepbrother's loan and my half-sister's private education while I work hard to pay off my own loan. Wow. I said, "I'm done with you guys. I was right, you came back into my life only for money. You know what? Suck it up, you don't get a penny." I left the table, leaving my share of the dinner bill on the table.